Nate Diaz bleeds badly in brutal loss to Mike Perry. Total bloodbath. There is a particular kind of fighter who does not know how to quit. Not because they are stupid, not because they lack self-awareness, but because quitting is simply not a function their body performs. Their legs can buckle, their eyes can swell shut, their skin can split open and pour blood down their face like a broken faucet. And they will still look at you through the red curtain dripping off their eyelashes and say, "Come on, let's go." Nate Diaz is that fighter. He has always been that fighter. And on Saturday night, May 16th, 2026, inside the Intuit Dome in Inglewood, California, in front of 18,000 people and millions watching on Netflix, Nate Diaz proved once again that his heart is made of something the rest of us cannot comprehend. And it still wasn't enough. Mike Perry defeated Nate Diaz by TKO. Corner stoppage. End of round 2. The official time was 5 minutes of the second round, but those numbers do not tell you what happened inside that cage. Those numbers do not describe the war. Those numbers do not capture the image of Nate Diaz sitting on his stool between rounds, his entire face covered in blood, his forehead split open like a fault line, blood streaming down his neck, down his chest, pooling on the canvas beneath him, while his corner tried desperately to stop the bleeding, and the doctor leaned in to look at the damage and made the only decision anyone with a medical license could make. Stop the fight. This man cannot continue. And Nate Diaz, covered in more blood than most people see in a lifetime, did not protest. He did not scream at the referee. He did not throw his mouthpiece. He sat on that stool and he accepted it. Because even Nate Diaz could not see through the blood. Even Nate Diaz, the man who has never backed down from a single human being on this planet, knew that his eyes were useless, his vision was gone, and the blood was winning a fight that Mike Perry had started. This was a bloodbath. This was a war. And this was one of the most brutally honest fights in recent MMA history. Let me take you through it.
I was blinded by blood on the right side.
How did you feel physically overall from the opening bell?
I felt all right. I didn't actually feel good at all. I felt like shit. I fucking yeah, you like that? I'm honest. I just started back in it. I just got back to MMA and they were asking me how's it. I'm like, I never was gone, but then as I got closer, I realized MMA is hard work. It's a lot of work, and I feel like I just started to callus everything up. You know, my body started to get hard, my legs started to get harder, everything started to move right together. It all started to fall into rhythm, and then it was time to fight. So the way it goes with this shit too, and it's like, and now I'm ready to fight. You know what I'm saying? Let's line up another one and get it going. And but that was kind of like a kickoff. Like, here we go. I wish I wouldn't have got banged up and took a fucking loss for the night or for the start of it. But I'm ready to get in action now. The show goes on.
And then last one for me, you obviously said after that you want the rematch with Mike. How soon do you think you can get back in there? And is that the fight you want, or are you open to other options as well?
Right now, yeah, that's that ASAP.
The build-up to this fight was pure MMA theater. On one side, Nate Diaz, the Stockton legend, 41 years old, the creator of the UFC's BMF belt, the man who submitted Conor McGregor at UFC 196 and became the most beloved cult figure in combat sports history. Diaz hadn't fought in MMA since September 2022, when he choked out Tony Ferguson at UFC 2079 in what was supposed to be his farewell to the sport. Since then, he had drifted into boxing, losing a decision to Jake Paul in 2023 and beating Jorge Masvidal by majority decision in 2024. But MMA was always home. The cage was always calling. On the other side, Mike Perry, Platinum, the king of violence, 34 years old, a man who left the UFC in 2021 with a losing record and reinvented himself as the most dangerous man in bare-knuckle fighting. Perry went 6-0 in BKFC, beating Michael Venom Page, Luke Rockhold, Eddie Alvarez, and Jeremy Stevens with his hands wrapped in nothing but tape and bad intentions. He lost to Jake Paul in a boxing match in 2024, but in the world of bare-knuckle combat, he was undefeated and untouchable. And now he was coming back to MMA, back to the cage, back to the 4-ounce gloves, with all the violence he had accumulated in BKFC packed into every punch. This was the people's co-main event. Two fan favorites, two brawlers, two men who would rather bleed than run. The fight everyone knew would be violent. The fight nobody expected to be this violent. Round 1 began with Perry charging forward like a man who had somewhere to be and no interest in getting there slowly. He launched hooks, he threw kicks. He came at Diaz with the kind of pressure that would make most fighters back up against the cage and cover up. But Nate Diaz is not most fighters. Diaz started working his jab. That long, flicking, annoying, beautiful Stockton jab that has been landing on faces since before most current UFC fighters had their first amateur bout. They clinched early. Perry landed an elbow, then another elbow. Diaz was briefly overwhelmed by the pressure, stumbling, absorbing shots he didn't see coming. But then Diaz did something that reminded everyone in that arena why he has survived 2 decades in the most brutal sport on earth. He threw Perry to the canvas with a judo hip toss. Clean, beautiful. Vintage Nate Diaz. He stood over Perry and delivered punches. He isolated a leg. He went to his back, threatening submissions, reminding Perry that the ground is Diaz's kingdom and you enter it at your own risk. But Perry got free. He stood back up, and that is when the fight shifted. Perry found the body, a right hook to the midsection that bent Diaz in half. Diaz's face twisted in pain. Perry saw it. Perry is the kind of fighter who smells blood and becomes more dangerous, not less. He pressed forward. He targeted the body again and again. Left hands started finding a home on Diaz's face. Perry's pressure was relentless. He was throwing with bad intentions and connecting with accuracy. Diaz fought back. He always fights back. He landed a double jab. He cracked Perry with a combination that snapped Perry's head sideways. For a moment, the Stockton faithful in the crowd erupted, believing their man was about to turn the tide the way he always does, the way he did against McGregor, the way he did against every fighter who ever made the mistake of thinking Nate Diaz was done. But then the cut opened. A slash appeared above Diaz's right eye. Not a small cut, not a nick, a gash, the kind of wound that looks like someone drew a line across your face with a razor blade. Blood began to trickle. Then it began to flow. Then it began to pour. Perry saw it and went after it like a shark in crimson water. Perry landed a knee to the body. Diaz fired back with a combination, but the blood was already becoming a factor. It was running into his right eye. He was blinking, he was wiping. He was trying to clear his vision while a 200-pound violence machine was throwing leather at his face from every angle. Perry landed an elbow in the clinch. The round ended. The scorecards had it 10-9 Perry, and that was generous to Diaz. The Stockton legend walked back to his corner, with blood already painting the right side of his face red. Round 2. Diaz came out jabbing. That's what Diaz does. No matter what happened in the previous round, no matter how badly he was hurt, no matter how much blood is in his eyes, he comes out jabbing. It is a reflex at this point. It is coded into his DNA. Double jab, step back, double jab, reset. The Diaz brothers have been throwing that jab since before most MMA fans were born, and it was still landing 20 years later. Diaz connected with a right hook. For a brief, shining moment, it looked like a different fight. Perry was also bleeding now. Both men were marked up. Both men were wearing each other's blood. This was turning into the kind of fight that people would talk about for years. But Perry's pressure was suffocating. He landed an uppercut, then another. Diaz clinched, trying to slow the pace, trying to catch his breath, trying to survive the onslaught. But when they separated, Perry was right back on him, pressing forward, throwing combinations, targeting the cut that was now hemorrhaging blood. Diaz's face was becoming unrecognizable. Blood was flowing from the gash above his eye, running down his cheek, dripping off his chin, splashing onto the canvas with every step he took. His white shorts were soaked red. Perry's gloves were soaked red. The cage floor looked like a crime scene. Perry pressed Diaz against the fence. Elbows, uppercuts, short punches to the body. Diaz was eating everything. His head was snapping back. His legs were heavy. He was moving in slow motion, trying to find openings that were closing faster than he could exploit them. Diaz went for a takedown. He needed the fight on the ground. He needed to get away from Perry's hands. He pulled guard and tried to threaten with an armbar, but there was nothing on it. His grip was compromised. His vision was compromised. Everything was compromised. Perry pulled free and let Diaz back to his feet. When Diaz stood up, that would not stop bleeding. The cut man worked with the urgency of a surgeon in a war zone. Vaseline, pressure, adrenaline solution, nothing was working. The blood kept coming. The doctor stepped in. He looked at the cut, he looked at Diaz's eyes, he saw what everyone watching on Netflix could see. This man could not see. This man's right eye was drowning in his own blood. This man, as tough as any human being who has ever lived, could not be allowed to continue. The fight was stopped. TKO. Corner stoppage. Mike Perry wins. And for a moment, the Intuit Dome was silent. Not because the crowd didn't care, but because watching Nate Diaz lose is like watching a force of nature get stopped by a wall. You know the wall won, but you also know the force of nature doesn't understand losing. It doesn't process defeat the way normal things do, it just keeps pushing. Those people do not understand Nate Diaz. Those people have never understood Nate Diaz. This was not a sad loss. This was a war. This was two men walking into a cage and agreeing to hurt each other until one of them couldn't continue. Mike Perry was the better fighter on this night. He was more aggressive. He was sharper. He caused damage that a doctor deemed too severe to continue. He earned the victory, but Nate Diaz sat on that stool covered in blood from head to toe and said he couldn't see. He didn't say he was hurt. He didn't say he was scared. He didn't say he wanted out. He said he couldn't see. And the implication was clear. If he could see, he would have kept fighting. If he could see, he would have walked back out there and traded punches with the king of violence for 3 more rounds or however long it took. Because that is what Nate Diaz does. He bleeds, he gets cut, he gets hit, he gets knocked down, and he gets back up. He always gets back up. He got back up against McGregor, he got back up against Masvidal, he got back up against every single fighter who ever thought they could break him. On Saturday night, the blood stopped him. Not Mike Perry, the blood. And even now, even as the stitches are being applied and the swelling is setting in and the doctors are telling him to rest, Nate Diaz is already thinking about the rematch. Because fighters like Nate Diaz don't process defeat the way normal people do. They don't analyze, they don't rationalize, they don't accept. They say, come on, let's go again. MVP's Nakisa Bidarian confirmed it on the Netflix broadcast. A rematch is already in the works. Perry versus Diaz, the sequel. And if it happens, God help the canvas, because these two will turn whatever cage they step into an absolute battlefield. Mike Perry won the fight, let that be clear. He won it decisively, violently, and emphatically. He is the better fighter right now. He has momentum, he has confidence, he has the King of Violence belt and the bare-knuckle resume to back it up. He deserves every bit of credit for what he did on Saturday night. But this story is not over. Not for Nate Diaz, not for the 209, not for the man who bleeds like no fighter in history and still refuses to go quietly. Nate Diaz walked out of the Intuit Dome on Saturday night with a face that looked like it had been through a car accident. Split open, swollen, stained red from hairline to chin. And somewhere behind all that blood, behind that battered face, behind those swollen eyes, there was a man who was already planning his comeback. Because Nate Diaz doesn't retire. Nate Diaz doesn't quit. Nate Diaz doesn't accept that the last image the world has of him is a bloody defeat on a stool in Inglewood. He will be back, he said so himself, and when he comes back, he will bleed again. Because that is what Nate Diaz does. He bleeds, he fights, he survives, and he comes back for more. That is not a loss, that is a lifestyle. 209, Stockton, California. The blood dries, the cuts heal, the warrior remains,